be a slave. Many persons are enslaved by their choices. Many persons are enslaved because of the lifestyle that they desire to live and the inability at the current point in time to afford or enjoy that lifestyle as they deem fitting. The truth be told, many persons are living above their means. And when we speak of your means, we speak of the amount that you can easily afford, easily facilitate. When you go above that, then you are now putting yourself in a stressed situation where any situation that comes up without notice turns your boat, rocks your ship, causes financial destabilization in your household, and you want to stay away from that at all costs. Whatever you invest in, whatever you put your hands to, it should be multiplied. So when we think about multiplication, we are also thinking about ROI. And we are thinking about an ROI, which means return on that investment. If you put $10 down, you don't want to get back $10. You want to get back $10 and maybe 10 cents, the least. If you put $10 down, you may even want to get back $20 after you have received back unto yourself that which you have placed. You want a multiplication to be taken place. So time also is important for this multiplication to take place. A higher ROI would indicate that that investment is actually one that is that people invest their money in are stocks. These are shares of publicly owned and traded companies. Then bonds, these are loans made to a government or corporation with the borrower agreeing to pay a fixed rate of interest over a certain period of time. Then we have the mutual funds, which are basically a combination of different vehicles pooled together in terms of having a diversified portfolio of bonds, stocks, securities, etc. Then we have real estate. These can include investment properties, residential or commercial properties such as houses, offices, etc. Then we have commodities, which is basically the raw material that goes into the end product of the goods and services that you so enjoy, maybe gold, maybe oil or wheat. Then we have some very volatile assets classes, which are cryptocurrency, which we're going to stay away from if we don't understand it. You can get into cryptocurrency, but you have to understand it before you get into it. Then we have businesses, which are safe, and some fail, yes, but these are good investment for a family to have a family business. And we have education, we have time, and we have emotional availability. Yes, some persons just drain you emotionally. So it's better sometimes to give someone money so that they can get away from you, so you don't have to deal with the drainage that come by being in their presence. Inflation is a hidden tax that exists in this world. And this tax is imposed by the government. It's a hidden tax because the government indicates that, hey, we are losing money. And inflation is basically a way for the government to tax you in another means without you even realizing. People just think that inflation just comes up out of the blue. Inflation is basically the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services rises. So when you're a consumer, you don't really have a control over the prices of the goods and services because you need these goods, you need these services, and you will now be positioned to have to pay for the goods or service at the price which is predetermined by the business owner. So you are realizing that if you are not the business owner, then you can't mitigate some of these risks. You can't mitigate some of these challenges that exist. So, what are we saying? We are saying that being an employee is good, but being a business owner is putting you in a better position so that you can mitigate the effects of inflation. So, when inflation occurs, you don't have to bear that burden alone. You can pass that inflation on to the customers. This is how inflation hurts the persons who actually are on fixed income. If you're employed and your organization pays you a fixed income, inflation goes up by 4%, your rate of increase is 2%. Now, last year, you would have been earning more money than you're earning in the current year because of the 4% inflation, your raise is 2%, so you are still short 2%. Plus, we have not factored in the inflation that is going to take place in the year to come, which is going to be compounding another 4%. So now you're actually out more than the 2% which you actually initially thought. So your income remains constant, but you have to buy goods and services which are going up in value. So you are getting less for the amount of money that you actually have. That there is a power of inflation. Interest rate, and compound interest. These are very critical for every individual to know. Interest is basically the percentage of the principal amount of a loan or the investment that is charged as interest. The higher interest rate may result into a higher payment over time. Interest is a cost of borrowing money, and it expresses the percentage amount that is paid in lieu of that which has been borrowed. Compounded interest functions on the rule of 72, and compound interest is going to be your best friend as we move into positioning you in investment opportunities so that you can make the right financial choice that is best for you. So when we talk about compound interest, it is interest that is calculated on both the principal, the initial amount that is invested, and the accumulation of interest on an investment. It can result in significant growth over time, particularly for long-term investment protocols. And most persons, when they think about investment, they think about maybe 1-2 years. That there is more like a short-term engagement. But when we think about investment, we are thinking about 10, 20, 30, 40 years of putting things away so that we can enjoy the benefit, or our children can enjoy that benefit. So we are not in a position where we need to show the world what we possess. We are just in a position where we want to position the future that is to come so that they will not have to start from stage one. So there are a few risks that affects your personal finances, and that includes the financial risk, the market risks, the credit risk, the liquidity risk, legal risk, reputation risk, and operational risk. So all of these risks are important for you to know, especially as it comes on to your personal finance. Financial risk refers to risk of losing money. Many persons want to make money, but they don't want to invest money in a way that is going to cause them to have a high risk, which means a high return. But in being averse to losing money, you are also putting yourself at a disadvantage in which you will not be in a position to make money. And remember, this money system is all a game to keep you on a hamster wheel. None of this is actually real. But even though it's not real, I'm going to show you how you can position yourself so as you can play this game and have a lot of points. So when we talk about the market risk is basically losing money due to the change in the market conditions, such as a change in the stock market, a change in the value of a particular asset. People don't like the product anymore, so they say, all right, this is not as valuable as it was yesterday. So based on that idea, don't you see that value is basically assigned? Value does not really exist. It is like having a diamond and taking it and putting it among rocks, and a person who is a rock breaker may just see the diamond and break it as though it is a rock. But if you take that same diamond to a jeweler, then the jeweler will find the value in it. So those are market risk, and depend on where the asset is, it determines the value of that asset. That is why a man sometimes is never crowned king in his own country. Credit credit risk exists when we consider losing money due to borrowing default on a particular loan. So if you lend someone money and they fail to pay you back, that there is a risk that you are taking on them. Then when we talk about liquidity risk, is the risk of being unable to sell an asset when needed in order to meet the financial obligation. Some assets are not as liquid as they should be or they could be, and as such, when you hold them, it takes some time for people to get the money together in order to close on that asset. So if you have a big house that was custom designed, then to find the right buyer at the price point that you have, guess what? That may take you quite some time. So even though the house may be valuable to you and on the market, not everybody may be able to afford it, especially because it was custom designed. So those are some risks that we have to take in consideration. Then we talk about legal risk. Legal risk basically refers to losing losses due to legal issues. So sometimes when you engage in business practices, you may get lawsuit. There may be regulation that you have to consider. So all these risks have to be taken into consideration. A big risk that you should always secure, you should always maintain, is your reputation risk. And this risk refers to your character, your integrity. As people of God, your reputation should speak for itself. When people come to do business with you as a person of God, they should expect nothing but the best. They shouldn't be thinking that you are there to scam them, you're there to cheat them, you're there to extort them, exploit them. You should be looking out for their best interest. You should be treating them in the same way, extending love to them in the way that God expects of you and the way that you desire for others to express love to you. Then when we engage in businesses, we have operational risk, and this is a loss due to the problems with internal processes such as accidents or errors. So when you have your family, you may have an operational system set up in which the mother has her role, the children have their role, but when there is a breakdown in the system internally, then that may put the family in a destabilized position. So risk management is important. In order to mitigate against risk that exists in our finances, we have to engage in risk management. It's not about just making a lot of money, it's about managing the risk so that we don't lose the money that we have amassed. And if we are not able to put things into perspective, then we are putting ourselves at a disadvantage. So we need to be able to analyze the financial statements of the household. We need to be able to study the market and see if the skills that we have are adequate, the resources that we are distributing, if they are sufficient. We have to ensure that we position ourselves in a way that we are financially ahead of the game. So, in order to do this risk assessment, there are three things that we need to do. We need to identify what is taking place, we need to assess that which is happening, and then we need to mitigate as necessary in order to reduce the possibility of risk, or to reduce the chance of having an adverse situation overtaking or destabilizing us financially. Your financial health is critical because many relationships break down because of the financial instability, and we don't want your relationship to be financially uh, unstable. We want your relationship to be so stable that it would take a category 50 hurricane to destroy it. And to be honest, we have not seen a category 50 to this point that has been recorded. Whenever you get into any form of money situation or investment opportunity, I want you to always consider and remember the word risk. Every individual has a different tolerance, a different threshold towards the risk that they're willing to take. And risk management is what is going to save you if you ever get into a tight situation. But before you get into that situation, I want to implore you and encourage you to assess risk before you engage in situations which can have your hands tied behind your back. So, now when we are talking about risk, risk is any situation that may be create a downfall in your investment direction, or things that can potentially destabilize your financial projection. And this can be mitigated by different strategies. The four main strategies of actually managing risk that everyone can consider to use are diversifying your investment, purchasing insurance, which is suggested based on the literature. However, I have some safeguards against that. Implementing risk management policies and procedures, which mean that you have structures in place that if this, then that, so that everything operates automatically. So you could be sleeping and risk management is taking over. And perform regular risk assessment. Every individual needs to know their risk tolerance. Risk tolerance is an individual's willingness to take on risk. It means that it is basically a measure of how much uncertainty or potential loss an individual is willing to accept in exchange for the potential higher rate of return on the particular investment. Risk tolerance is basically a personal scale. So some persons may have a higher threshold and some may have a lower threshold. And this can vary from person to person. You have different appetites. Some persons like vegetarians, some persons like carnivorous. So it is personalized to each individual. But when you understand these concepts, you can personalize these for yourself. So some people may be willing to take on higher levels of risk to the total order, or with the mindset of earning a higher return on their investment, while others may prefer a lower level of risk, but that may give you a more predictable return, but not as high a return as you may have desired. But if you actually truly desired a higher return, you'll be willing to take more risk and risk the potential of losing more of your capital or more of your invested assets or funds, whatever it may be. So, the next concept I want you to be aware of is risk threshold. So, risk threshold is the level of risk that an individual is willing to take on comfortably. It is a measure of how much uncertainty or potential loss an individual is willing to accept before they begin to feel uncomfortable or uncertain about their investment. So some persons will see their account going down to even 90% and they're okay with that. Others, if they go to 10%, they are panicking. So you have to know where you are on the spectrum, and each person's may have a different positioning, so they will operate in on their investment journey differently. Some people may have a higher risk threshold and willing to take on a lot of risk in order to get the potential of a higher rate of return, while others, as we always have the opposite spectrum, will have a lower threshold and prefer a more predictable low risk investment strategy. In general, it is important for individuals to understand their own risk tolerance and risk threshold in order to make informed investment decision that aligns with their personal financial goals and risk preference. So two persons may have the same investment, but one is getting more than the other party, because the entry is very important, not only the exit. So you make money in actually the procurement, the purchasing, and that there is where most of the money is made. Because if you buy at a bad spot, then it will take you a longer time to recover, and we want to stay clear from those kind of situations. So risk tolerance is something that has to be considered when you are going to do any form of investment. But I want you to understand the different classes, the four main classes of risk tolerance. First, you have the aggressive individuals, which are persons like myself. This type of risk is characterized by high willingness to take on risk in the pursuit of a higher return. Aggressive investors may be more comfortable with high risk, high reward investments such as stocks, commodities, real estate, futures, forex, whatever it is. They are more aggressive. They don't care if their account is burned up. So those are persons like myself. Then you have persons who are not as willing because of how they had to work very hard for their money. So they want to secure it. But when you're in that mindset, then you are actually limiting yourself. So you have those who come under the moderate risk level, and this type of risk tolerance is characterized by a willingness to take on a moderate amount of risk in pursuit of a moderate return, which is, let's say, basically a little bit above the stock market returns. Moderate investor may get involved in ETF, mutual fund, so these kind of fund, they will get into those. So it is good. It is better to be in a moderate than in the other categories. So then we have the conservative. The conservative individuals, this type of risk tolerance is characterized by a low willingness to take on risk in pursuit of return, which means that they are willing to take some chances, take some risk, but their return based on how they are going is going to give them a low level. So people who have a conservative mindset will get their money in CDs and other money market funds that are low risk, low return. So you may get 1 to 2%, maybe 10, well, not even 10, maybe 7% in some instances. It all depends on the market, the economic, and the fluctuation. Then you have persons who are risk averse. This type of risk tolerance is characterized by individuals averse to risk. So risk averse investors may prefer to keep their money in low risk, low return, such as short term cash, short term bonds. And you know that these don't really pay you much money. and you are better being risk averse, or even in a savings account. That is also for persons who are risk averse, because in a saving account you're basically losing money without even realizing it. So you have to decide where you fall on the spectrum, and then based on where you are, you decide how you're going to move in into getting the maximum benefit from your investment based on what you desire. Because I know that some persons don't really want to have a lot of money. Some persons just want to have enough money, which baffles my mind when I hear people say they just want to have enough money. If you are a believer in the Word of God, you should have the desire to be the head. And the only way you can be the head is if you have control over the tool set to get you what you need, so that you can reach out and help people in the different communities. It is very important to note that risk tolerance can vary from person to person and can also change over time. It is important for individuals to do a regular risk assessment so that they can know their risk tolerance and make sure that their investment portfolio aligns with risk tolerance and their financial goal. And you maybe hear me saying portfolio, and we're talking about the different markets. It is because we are going to be moving away from the idea of even putting our money in the banks. Because if you understand how the banks work and how the banks make their money, and you are in a position where you can do it for yourself, then you are far more ahead than the average individual. So, lack of knowledge is a reason why many persons are in a state in which they are in desire mode, they are in want, they are in a state of lack. Diversification is the practice of spreading your investment across a variety of asset classes, industries, geography, in order to reduce the overall risk of your portfolio. And we have found that if you are not doing your research, a diversified portfolio may be better for you. But if you are a student and you are focused on one area, then a focused portfolio will be more fruitful than a diversified portfolio. A diversified portfolio is for risk management, yes, but a diversified portfolio also limits your potential to earn above the market average. So diversifying is a risk management strategy which involves the spreading out of your investment among the different asset classes. So you may have stocks, you may have bonds, you may have futures, you may have forex, you may have real estate, you may have cash, and industries. When we talk about industry, we're talking about mining, we're talking about energy sector, we're talking about transportation, we're talking about healthcare. Then geography, we may talk about the United States, development in countries, we may talk about Africa, England, whatever area of the world. The idea behind diversification is to reduce risk of any one investment. So if one is performing poorly, you may have the others that will bring that one up, so your portfolio does not take a nosedive. So this can help to reduce the overall volatility of your portfolio and potentially increase the chance of achieving your financial goal. There are several ways to diversify your portfolio, and the most common ones are stocks, bonds, cash. There are others which we will get into as time progresses. Some words I want us to take note of are credit, credit card, credit score, credit report, credit worthiness. But before we get into those words, I want us to gear our mind to Proverbs 22, verse 7. And the King James Version reads, "The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is a servant or slave to the lender." So, now that we have that out of the way, let us get into understanding the concepts of credit, credit card, credit score, credit report, and credit worthiness. Credit. Credit is the ability to borrow money or to access financial services, typically using a credit card or a loan facility. So, in order to have access to borrow money, you have to have some relationship. But in order to have a relationship, you're going to need a report card, and you're also going to need a score. So that takes us now to the credit score. A credit score is a numerical representation of an individual's credit worthiness based on their credit history. It is used by lenders to assess the risk of lending money to an individual. So let us think about it. In order to have a credit score, you have to have a credit history which tells your credit worthiness. I hope that you're seeing that there's some disconnection taking place. So, in order to get money, you have to already have a history. So, if you're a new person having no history, you may have a challenge in having a credit score. Now, there has to be a report that is generated to present to us this number. So that takes us to the credit report. The credit report is basically a detailed record of an individual's credit history, including information on their credit account, payment history, or outstanding debt. So if you don't have any credit history, which means that you have never borrowed money before, you have never been a servant to a financial institution, then you will not have this information. That means that you would not have a credit account, you would not have a payment history, and you would not have any outstanding debt because you are basing your availability of resources on what you actually possess. So you're only utilizing what you have in your possession, what you are able to lose. So that there puts us in a catch 22 because in order to have credit, you need to have a credit score. But in order to get the credit score, you need to have a credit history. But in order to have a credit history, to be on a credit report, you actually need to have debt. So this system is putting us in a conundrum, and that there makes it a challenge to get a credit card. Now, a credit card is a financial product. Yes, it is a product that allows an individual to borrow money from a lender up to the certain limit that is set, and they have to pay this back over time. So the credit card is there as a loan. So yes, it is actually you borrowing money to use in a particular period that you'll have to pay back in a next period. And if you are unable to pay this money back, then you will have to pay what we call interest. Now, for the recap. So, the credit refers to the ability of an individual or a business to borrow money or to access financial services based on their perceived ability to pay it back. So, if you have $10 million and you have no credit outstanding, outstanding debt, you don't owe anybody any money, there is the hesitancy of persons to actually lend you money even if you have money. because you don't have a history. But in order to have a history, you have to have the ability to borrow. So that there is a challenge that many persons face when they are getting into this system, and that there makes room for the predators to feast upon the naive, the young, the innocent, because of ignorance. A credit card is a financial tool that allows the user to borrow money from a lender, typically a bank, in order to purchase or to withdraw cash. And even though you can withdraw cash, it is not advisable to withdraw cash from a credit card, because that is going to trigger a cash advance fee, which is usually about 3 to 5% in some instances, but you have predators who can even take it up further, depend on the jurisdiction. And the interest is capped in some countries, but in other countries it can go up to 80-90%. In Jamaica, one of the leading financial institutions currently have a 50% credit card, which would in America be considered a loan shark kind of territory. So we have to be very mindful and very vigilant as to the different interests that we have to pay. Credit cards usually have a credit limit. So basically, the credit card has a limit. So they will tell you, hey, you have $500 limit, or you have $50,000 in credit limit, which means that they will guarantee you that amount of money so you can take that loan and do whatever you need to do with it within that limit, and then you pay it back over time or over a particular predetermined time. And if you are not able to meet that deadline obligation, usually 25 to 31 days is the window for revolving credit. If you don't pay within that time, you'll have to pay interest on the money. Plus, if you miss the payment, you'll have to pay a late fee. And then guess what? That impacts the credit score. So there is a minimum balance that needs to be paid at the end of each month when one has a credit card. So a credit score is the numerical representation of an individual's credit worthiness based on the credit history. So if you don't have a credit history, you cannot have a credit worthiness score. But they will just generically give you a low score because you don't have a history. The standard score range from 300 in the United States up to 850. In this region, depend on where you are. If it is 300, that's bad. If it's 850, then that's a good territory. Credit score are used by lenders. They are used by landlords, which are still lenders because they're lending your premises, their properties. They're used by financial institution to evaluate the risk of lending money or extending credit to an individual. And for some strange reason, I don't know why it is that your landlord would need your credit report, but in some cases they do need it in order to weed out persons who are not going to be able to pay the rent that is due. And you know that some states, some jurisdiction has more affinity towards being more overwhelmed by the renters, in terms of the renters have more power than the landlords, so they have to mitigate against that risk as well in their investment or in their business. Now, the credit report. A credit report is a detailed record of an individual's credit history, including the information about their credit accounts. So if you have a credit card, if you have a vehicle loan, if you have a mortgage, whatever accounts, the credit inquiries, which mean that if you try to get loan from bank A, bank B, bank C, all of that will be there. Your payment history. So if you had credit before and you had a good track record, that there is going to be on the payment history. And the payment history is usually, some of the bad delinquencies usually drop off after about 7 years. But we don't want you to have any delinquencies on your credit report if you currently have credit cards and credit facilities. So credit reports are used by lenders and other financial institutions to assess your credit worthiness of you as an individual or a business if you are representing a business, to see if the business will be able to pay back the money that has been granted to them or extended to them. Credit is the trust that allows you to borrow money or to access loans from a lender. So, credit is based on trust, and you have to understand why it has to be based on trust, because the money that you're giving you doesn't really exist. So, it is a trusting relationship that I give you, you will give it back to me. And but the thing is, you are always, as the borrower, at a disadvantage, because the lender can always write off the bad debts and get exemptions based on those written off debt. So even if you have delinquencies and creditors are calling you and they have sold your information to other facilities so that they can get whatever it was that was owed, they would have already written off that debt, and they would have already been credited for that written off debt, but they are still sending someone to try to collect that debt because they had sold your debt to it is a system that is intertwined and interweb. But as the borrower, you are actually the servant, because now you are working to pay them back. So am I saying that you should not have any debt? I am actually saying that it is better to go to bed not thinking about who you owe money. It is better to think about who owes you money and how you're going to get your money from those persons. Take it from me, it is better that way. All right, so as much as is possible, I would advise people not to take out debt. And if you are the head, the word of God says to us that we should be the head and not the tail, which means that we should be the ones with the resources as Christians. We should be the ones helping people who need the resources. We are not the ones who should be trying to get that resource by these secularized methodologies. Credit is typically issued or extended in the form of a credit card, which many persons have and have hung themselves because of those credit cards and their balloon payments that they have to make, and the monthly interest and the installments and all these burdens of fees upon fees. Or they may take a loan, yes, a loan such as a car loan, a vacation loan, all these loans. But the thing is, if you cannot afford it, do not go and get it. All right, and it is based on your credit worthiness, which is determined by the credit score and the credit report. So your credit worthiness is not necessarily a true reflection of your trustworthiness, because you could be a trustworthy individual, but because you don't have any history that is documented, then you are denied credit. You are denied the opportunity to be in the financial operation where credit is being discharged. So, a credit card is a financial product that allows you, the borrower, to access money from the lender up to the limit to make purchases or withdrawal. So, credit card typically charges interest for unpaid balance, and this is where they make their money. They also may have annual fees, and you should stay away from annual fees. You should not even be paying interest on the money that you take from your credit card. In terms of the money you swipe on your credit card, you should not be paying interest. So you have to have the money before you even swipe that card. So balance transfer, if you transfer, you have a credit card that has a high interest rate and you transfer from one card to another card, they may charge you a 3 to 5% balance transfer, and some jurisdiction may charge you even more. And then they have other charges, late fee, they may have minimum balance fee, and all these kind of fee. So you have to be very mindful that you are actually setting yourself up in a prison when you are receiving a credit card, especially if you are receiving it in ignorance, because these financial institutions can be predatory, and that can jeopardize your whole financial plan for the future. And you don't want your financial plan to be jeopardized. A credit score is a numerical representation of your creditworthiness based on information in your credit report. So you have to have a report to have a score. Just like when you're going to a school, you get your different subjects or your different classes, and you have the different grades, and at the end of the day they give you the average, and then they calculate based on everyone else in that year group to see where you fall, whether you're first, whether you're second, whether you are last. So it's the same thing that the credit score system is based on. Now let us look at credit worthiness. So credit worthiness is a measure of a person's ability to pay back a loan or credit. It is determined by the number of factors, including the credit history. All right. So whatever you had before, whatever facility, whoever you borrowed money from, you borrowed something from in the past, and it was reported, because you can borrow money and it's not reported. So once it's reported, then it creates a history on your file. So your income as well determines how much money you can access. So the more money you make, the more credit they are willing to give you, because they are assuming that you have the ability to pay that back. And if they can do your DTI, debt to income ratio, and you have a low debt to income, then you are even getting more money available. Then your employment status, if you are employed, it means that you have cash flow coming in, and when you have cash flow coming in, that is encouragement to the financial institution to give you money. So yes, they want to give you money so as you are not only working with your employer, but you're also working now for them when they give you that money. So a credit worthy person is likely to be approved for loans or credit, while a person with a poor credit worthiness may be denied or offered less favorable terms. So if you don't have a good credit worthiness based on the credit scoring metrics, the number that they assign to you, you will have a lower score. It doesn't mean that you are less worthy. It just means that they don't see you as a fitting candidate for the resources that they would be given to others at a more favorable. So when they think that you are in a more, how should we say it, unfavorable position, then you get exploited more, in which you'll have a higher interest rate, you'll have lower limits, and you will be in a bind with greater restriction as to how you can use the facilities that are assigned. The more money you have, the more people want to give you money. It is like the principle where money attracts money. And many people will realize that the more money you have, the more money you get. And it's easier for you to embrace this belief and this system, because this is how the world and the money flow system work. That is why the rich will always become richer, because money attracts money. And the perception of money also attracts money. All right, so credit history is an important determinant factor in determine your credit worthiness, it includes the record of a person's borrowing and repayment history, as well as any bankruptcy, because a lot of persons bite more than they can chew. All right, and they may get into difficulty in which they have to file for bankruptcy. So lenders use this information to assess the risk of lending to a person, and a strong credit history can help to demonstrate that the person is reliable and responsible with money. So they want you to be responsible with money so that they can give you more money. But if you were responsible prior with other people's money, you will be responsible with their money. But why not just be responsible with your money? That way you don't have to borrow other people's money and then have that burden over you, so you can't even sleep good at night because you're thinking about repossession. You're thinking about having to go to a job that you don't want to go to just because you have to pay these bills. Income is another important factor in determining your credit worthiness. Lenders want to see that the person has a stable income that is sufficient to make or to meet that requirement of payment of the loan or the credit that has been extended to them. This helps to ensure that the person will be able to pay back the money that they borrowed. So if you took a loan, you had a job, and then you lose a job, you still have the loan, right? So it is helpful to the lender at the beginning, but during the process, it's no longer helpful because things and circumstances can change. And that is why they always want to see the history, employment history coming into the mix as well. But before we get to the employment history, debt is also a factor in credit worthiness. A person with a lot of debt may be considered less credit worthy than someone with less debt, as they may seem as less able to pay back the credit. But let us think about it. The reason why you get a loan facility is to probably clear debt, but they want to give you money when you really don't need the money so that they can make money from you. So you have to know what is in your best interest if you are going to take on debt upon yourself and become a slave to a financial institution. Your employment history can also affect your credit worthiness. A person with a stable employment history is generally considered more credit worthy than someone who has had frequent job changes or gaps in employment. So they don't like when you move from job to job, even if the job is paying you more. They want you to be constant or consistent. But the truth be told, it varies from person to person. Some persons will move from job to job. Other persons will stay in one job, and they are in that job not because they need to be in that job, but because they just want to get a particular access to a particular loan facility. But usually people, after they get that loan facility, they just get up and move to another deployment or employment opportunity. So it is beneficial on the front end, but in the middle and on the back end, it is not giving a good indicator in the long run. Overall, credit worthiness is an important factor in determining a person's ability to borrow money and to access credit. It is important for people to manage their credit and financial affairs responsibly in order to maintain a strong credit worthiness. And let me let you know that you can actually borrow money without even having a credit score. There is something called the manual underwriting, but most persons are too lazy and just want to put everything in a system, a database, and give you an answer. Yes, but in summary, credit cards, credit score, and credit report are all related to borrowing and lending money, and they are all used to assess credit worthiness and financial stability. So just as our companies exist and we go through the balance sheet, we go through the financial statements, we go through all these records to see if they are a viable company before we invest in them. It's the same system that exists when other persons are looking in. They want to see your household financials so that they know if you are in a position to meet your debt obligation. So you cannot want to expect X from external companies, but your internal company, your household, that as a man you should be leading and the woman should be managing. But if you're a single man, then you should be the leader and also the manager until the woman comes to manage the resources that you have and she multiplies them because she is now helping you to achieve the vision that God has impressed upon you. So these are some things that we have to take into a consideration. So when we talk about credit card, risk assessment, risk management, we have to talk about credit management. So credit management refers to the process of managing and using credit in a responsible way, and efficient way, and effective way. This includes understanding credit. All right. This can involve applying for credit cards, loans, or other forms of credit. When applying for credit, it is important for individuals to shop around. I know that many persons may still desire to be a slave, but that is not what we are presenting to you. We don't want you to be enslaved. Some persons are already shackled by credit, so we are just going to give you guidance as to how you can get out of the debt cycle so that you can become financially free, because there is joy in freedom. So if you're going to try to get a credit facility to get out of the credit bind that you're in, maybe you get a 0% interest credit card to clear off the balance that you have, so you buy yourself a little time. You have to shop around for the best rates. You don't want to take the low hanging fruit. And if you get a low limit credit card, the lowest limit credit card you have impacts the other organization ability to give you money, because they're saying that they gave you $500 credit limit, they want to give you 5,000. They are not going to give you the 5,000 because you have that 500 limit on there. So you have to try to increase your credit limit so that you can get access to more credit. And sometimes you just have to cut off the low limit cards. If they are not increasing your limit, just cut them off and call it a day. And yes, it will impact your credit history, especially if this was one of your first cards that you have. So the more predatory banks or financial institution will give you low limits and keep you in that there for an extended period of time, which will jeopardize your ability to get access to actually good credit lines. So you have to know and weigh the balance to see what is in your best interest. Using credit wisely, once you have obtained credit, it is important for you to use it wisely and responsibly. This means that you will pay your bills on time. You'll keep your credit balance low. Usually 10% is the area that we want to, 0 to 10% is where we want to keep it at the end of the statement cycle. So we don't want to get it up to 25%, because 25% is the next tier, but anything above 25%, that there is over leverage situation. All right, so we are going to try to keep it to 0 to 10%. And taking more credit than you can afford to pay back, that there is a setup for a disaster unless you are strategic and you're going to be doing a rotation of your credit. You're moving from one to another, you're transferring money, and you're not incurring those charges or those fees. So monitoring your credit score, because sometimes, especially in America, people will open credit cards on your behalf without your permission or consent, because they have taken on your identity. So this is a practice, stolen identity. So you have to monitor your credit. They will even change your address, so that's the credit information is sent to another address. You have to be very mindful, because your data is constantly being bought and sold on the web and on the black market or the dark web. It's a good idea to monitor your credit regularly to ensure that your credit reports are accurate and that you are not a victim of identity theft. You can get a free copy of your credit report from the three major credit bureau, which are the Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, once per year. All right. So if that is important to you, then you can do that. Or you can just, when you apply for credit and you are going to receive credit, they also give you an indication of what your credit score is. So if they deny you credit, they also tell you what your credit score is, what are the reasons why they denied you the credit. So you can use that paper and know what your credit score is at the current time, and also the reason for the denial. Now, paying off debt. If you have outstanding credit card balances or other debts, it is important to make regular payments, not only regular payment, but make on-time payments to pay off the debt to improve your credit score and your financial stability. The aim of our interaction on the Dr. Kareem Ainsley Encounter is for you to be in a financially stable position so that you can have financial peace. And when you have financial peace, you can move into financial prosperity. And that there is where the financial freedom comes in. So by following these steps, you can effectively manage your credit and use it to your advantage. It is important that you remember that the credit is just a tool, and like any tools, if it's not used wisely, then it may be misused, which makes it useless. By using credit wisely, you can build a strong credit history and a financial foundation if you are in that realm or already in that realm. But what I want us to consider, though you may be in this realm of having credit card, I want you to consider, how can you become so free that you have no longer a need for credit cards, you don't have a need for loan facilities. You can now live a life in abundance where you have financial freedom. So that is where I want you to put your mind, so that we can get into the stage of how we are going to get out of debt. When it comes down to money, I want you to understand what principal and percentage rate means. So the principal, this is the initial amount of money that the borrower, or the initial amount of money that is invested. So it's either the amount of money that is borrowed or the amount of money that is invested. And the annual percentage rate, or the APR, is the annualized interest rate that is charged on a loan or credit card, including fees or other additional costs associated with borrowing the money. All right. So credit can work in two different areas. In credit, you can be the borrower or you can be the lender. When you are the lender, you are considered the investor because you are getting the interest. When you are the borrower, It means that you are paying the interest which is going to the investment of the lender. So you have to decide which side of the spectrum you want to be. You want to be the slave or the servant, or do you want to be the master, the ruler, the head, as the word of God indicates? Some other key concepts I want us to bear in mind are saving, budgeting, and emergency fund. Each individual needs to just have an understanding of these concepts. So saving is a type of account that is allowed for deposits to be placed in. Budgeting is basically a method of structuring the money that is coming in and ensuring that they are assigned to where they are going to have their outflow. All right, and then the emergency fund is a fund that is set up with money saved is for specifically unexpected situation or expenses or emergencies. So those three things are very important for us to know. So when we talk about saving, a savings account is typically a financial product. Yes, I keep using the word product because when you go to the bank, they are actually selling you something. They are selling you a checking account. They are selling you a savings account. They are selling you a credit card. They are selling you loans. They are selling you all these investment opportunities. They're actually presenting that is their product, right? So yes, a savings account is a financial product that allows you to deposit and save money in a bank or a credit union or a community facility. A savings account typically offers the lowest form of interest rate than other types of investment accounts. When we say the lowest form, we mean that it is negligible. We don't mean that it's like the lowest, like there is no other account that provides lower, because checking account sometimes provides equal to a savings account. So you just have to shop around for the best rate, and different areas, different jurisdiction may even have negative interest rate. So we have to be very mindful of where the money that we have or acquire is being parked. So saving refers to the act of setting aside a portion of your income or your inflow or the cash flow for future use rather than spending it in the present. But saving, the idea of saving is not that you're not going to spend it. The saving is for the purpose of spending or for keeping the money cycle or the money flow going. But it's just to amass a particular amount to spend on a particular endeavor. All right? So money that you want to spend, you're actually saving first to amass it so that you don't have to take a loan against the money. But different persons have different teachings, and yes, it is easier to advance your wealth by taking loans and taking more risk. But each person has to decide whether they want to follow the world standards or whether they want to follow God's standards, and that there now is dependent on you and your relationship. To have a financial cushion is one of the reasons for saving. To pay off large purposes is also another reason to have a saving, such as you want to pay off your house, you want to buy a brand new car. All of these are reasons for saving. To achieve your financial goal, you want to retire, you want to send your child to college, you want to do something special for someone, that there is another reason for saving. If you want to have financial freedom and to make decisions without looking back, people may save for those situations. But there are other ways to get and achieve all of this. Some persons save in a bank, some persons save in investment account, such as the 401k, the IRA, or the other investment vehicle. But we want you to realize that saving and investing are two different ball games, right? So savings, you have access to your cash, or your liquidity is available. But with investment, your liquidity is not readily available. You have to wait a period for the money to be cleared, and then you have to deal with the possibility of taxation or the restriction as to when you can actually access your own money. So all of these has to be taken into consideration when we're talking about saving and investing. When it comes on to saving, it is generally recommended that you save a few dollars each month, but you have to determine what your goals are and what it is that you need to achieve. So every single dollar that you make should have an allocation. So if you make $100,000, the $100,000, every single dollar should have an allocation. So at the end of the month, you should have zero unallocated funds. All right. So there are several different types of savings account. You can choose whichever you desire. You have the traditional savings account, which is basically putting your money in the bank so you can draw it out at the ATM. Then you have the high yield savings account, which has better interest rate. In 2024, you may get 5% on your money. Then you have money market account, which you could say gives a higher rate of interest than the traditional savings account, but not necessarily than the high yield saving account in at this time. You can do this month to month. Then you have certificate of deposit, which should give you a higher rate of return than the high yield savings account. However, your money is basically locked up for a fixed period, and then there's this penalty if you take your money out prior to the time of the lock-in being completed. Then you have your online savings account. So there are many different ways that you can save money, but all your money should be allocated for a specific purpose. Now, budgeting is basically a plan for managing your money, which including your incomes and your expenses. Yes, I said incomes, which means that you should have more than one source of income. But if you have one, that's a good place to start. If you have zero, you need to get one, and when you get one, you need to multiply to get more than one. So because one is too close to zero, and if you are in a state where you have no cash flow coming in, then you are running the risk of increasing your burn rate, because now you can be taken advantage of. And we don't want you to be in a state where you are taken advantage of. A budget is a financial plan that outlines how you will allocate your income and expenses over a period of time, usually the month. Creating a budget can help you to manage your money more efficiently and track your spending. I want you to track your spending. So remember, we want to allocate every single dollar that we have, so we know where every single dollar is going. And when we know where every single dollar is going, then we can tell the dollar what it needs to do. And if it's not performing, then we can just take it back and put it where it will be performed. Remember the story of the man who went on a journey, and he had his servants and he gave them the different talents. The ones that multiplied, they got more. The one that didn't decide that multiplication was in his vocabulary, that was taken away. So it's the same principle that applies to your money. So the Bible has been teaching us all this time about managing our family, managing money, managing our health, but we have been oblivious to that which was right in front of us. So yes, we have to exercise proper stewardship as we move forward into being a representation of God's ideal. So to create a budget, you will need to determine your income. So everything that you get money from, or you garner money from, you have to indicate that everything that you spend the money on, your expenses, whether they are fixed, they have to be included. Your variable expenses have to be included. So your groceries, your utilities, your transportation, your cost of debt. So if you have debt payment, that there now comes as an expense to you. So all of these things have to be factored in. So once you have the income and you have the expenses, then you can allocate each of those, and then you subtract your income from your expenses, and then now you can decide where you want to increase and decrease and make adjustments as needed, so you can actually see where your money is going, and then you can do your percentage calculation so that you can have a visual graphical representation of your inflows and outflows. When we talk about the emergency fund is a fund that is set up. It's like a savings account, but it's like a maybe 3 to 6 months emergency fund, maybe a year. It all depends on what amount of money you think that you'll reasonably need in order to accomplish the vision that you have been given. So the emergency fund is set up with a specific amount of money that can last for a specific amount of time, just in case there's an unexpected emergency that comes. So say for instance, you may have lost your job. You have a 6 months grace period where you can use what you have, live off that, and still not be in a position where you are destitute, right? So you have that set aside just per adventure. So an emergency fund is a specific amount of money that is set aside for an unexpected or a financial emergency. Yes, and it should only be used in the case of an emergency. So you'll have your emergency fund, and usually I encourage people to put your emergency fund in a high yield savings account, because you can access an high yield savings account funds just as though you can access your debit and your debit card, your debit money, or your money in your checking account. So you can just transfer it from your high yield savings right back into your checking account within seconds. So and the high yield savings account give you a higher rate of return than your savings account. So I would suggest that you go straight into your high yield savings account with your emergency fund. All right, and then all your other money will be allocated to your different investment, to your different goals and objectives, and then you tackle them one by one. But you have to have a vision, you have to have a plan in order to be able to execute them and know that you are being successful or unsuccessful. So an emergency fund is a specific amount of money that is set up for an unexpected expenses or financial emergency. It is generally recommended to have an emergency fund that is equal to 3 to 6 months of your living expenses, although the exact amount will depend on the individual circumstances based on what you actually use, the cost of living is in the area, how much you are actually earning. So having an emergency fund can provide a financial security and help you to weather unexpected financial challenges such as a job loss, medical expenses, natural disaster. It can also help you to avoid taking on additional debt such as a credit card or a same day or payday loan. To build an emergency fund, you have to set aside a small amount of money from each of your paycheck, or to set up an automated method of transferring money from your checking account to your high yield savings account at a particular point in time in the month, so you don't see the money, because some persons, when they see the money, they want to spend the money, and that there is a problem. In general, it is recommended to use your emergency fund only in the case of a true emergency. So we don't want you to create an emergency just because you want to tap into the funds. Just let the funds sit there, and that will give you the peace of mind to live with less stress and anxiety as you take your time to build, and you take your time to strategize and determine where you want to be in the future. Remember, in order to get anywhere, you have to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan for your future, someone else will have a plan how you can be instrumental in helping them to achieve their future goals and objective. So, with that said, I hope that you will be adequately positioned to use the resources that God has given you so that you can be a steward that is representing God in His glory. Until next time. There are a few words that I would like for you to bear in mind as you navigate your financial journey. And one of those words is cash flow. Every individual needs to know what a cash flow is. Cash flow basically speaks to the flow of cash. Cash flow is the movement of money in and out of your entity, individual's bank account, your business account, whatever it is that you possess, where cash is used to transact or to keep things afloat. So if you have a positive cash flow, it indicates that you have more money coming in than you have going out, while a negative cash flow would indicate that you have more money going out than you have coming in. And we don't want you to be in a state where you have a negative cash flow, because when you have a you're strapped for cash, or you have a tight cash flow, just breaking even, then there is where the predators take charge and come in to sweep you off your feet, giving you all these loan facilities to hold you shackled. So, what you must first do is to try to understand your cash flow situation. In order to determine your cash flow situation, what you have to do as an individual is to understand where are you getting your cash from. So if you have a job that there presents cash flow, if you have other activity that generates income or revenue, that there is cash flow. So if what the modern people call it is like side hustles, if you have those can be considered a cash flow. If you have a business, that is even a better way to structure cash flow, because that there is somewhat more predictable. If you have investments that you receive dividends or you receive interest payments on, that there also presents cash flow. So understanding where all the cash is coming from, if you have a rental income, that there is also cash flow. And then after you have determined what your inflows are, you need to determine what your outflows entail, whether that be the expenses for the rental properties, your daily upkeep, the money that is necessary to pay your employers, your employees as the employer. That there will give you an idea as to how you need to position yourself so that you can have a positive cash flow. Payroll, that's very important to consider, especially when you are running a business. So these are just some of the things and the ideas that I want you to consider. I want you to take charge of your financial position. I want you to run your house as a business, because your home is actually a business. It is your business. As we navigate this cash flow concept, I want you to think about it. Cash should always be flowing. Cash should never remain constant or stagnant. So if you had $10 yesterday, you don't want to have $10 today. You want to have $10 plus a couple cents at least, to show that your cash is increasing, because we believe in the principle of multiplication. When cash becomes stagnant, what happens is inflation. It means that the money that you have cannot produce or provide for you the same thing that it could yesterday, because the cost of goods keep going up, so that there is devaluing the money that you have. So if you had $10 yesterday and you have $10 today, the $10 that you have today is less than the $10 that you had yesterday. So cash should always be flowing, and the more free flowing your cash is, the better it is for you, because having money is one thing, but keeping the money is another thing. Getting the money, many persons can do that. Keeping the money, having accountability to the money, that is where many persons find themselves in an challenge, in a ditch, in a difficult situation. So think about this. There are two types of cash flow. We have the operating cash flow, and this basically refers to the cash flow that is generated from the day-to-day operation of your business, which includes the sales of goods or services. Or when you think about your household, because your household is your business, I want you to think about it, daily operation, how much it costs for your breakfast, how much it costs for your lunch, your dinner, how much it costs for your ability to be in the space, your rent, whatever, if it's your mortgage payment, whatever that costs, your utility, all of those things are for the daily operation of your household. So those have to be taken into your heating, your plumbing, your electric, all those things have to be taken into consideration, so that there is cash flow from operating expenses. And the good thing is that your home can become a business, in that if you are utilizing the extra space that you have in generating income, maybe putting it on the rental market, having short-term stays, short-term rentals, and all those kind of stuff, that there can generate revenue and inflows for that operation. All right. I know that many persons may be adverse. They want to have their homes a sacred space, but you have to weigh the balance and see if your home should just remain strictly a sacred space, and then you have no money to buy food, to do the necessary things that you need to do in order to maintain the lifestyle that you currently possess. Then another type of cash flow that we want to talk about is the investing cash flow. And this refers to the cash that is generated from the sales of long-term assets such as properties or equipment. And when we talk about properties or equipment, we're talking about when you have your home, you have properties or land, or you have equipment. If you have a farm, you're from a farming community, you have farming supply, farming equipment, you may have vehicles, taxis that you had on the road. So all those things are considered equipment. If you're a mechanic, you have your tool set. So when you sell those can be a form of cash flow for you. So when you're not using those tools anymore, or you have advanced your methodology in how you operate, then there you can dispose of those and generate some cash. Other long-term assets we're talking about, like your stocks, your bonds, especially for an individual entity, your mutual funds. When you dispose of those or give them to someone else, or you put them back on the market, then you will reap the return on that investment. So those are long-term sales, and usually long-term on these markets are usually classified as 1 year and 1 day. All right, so just bear that in mind. So it is important for us to monitor the cash flow, because it affects how the business operate, which is your business, or your individual ability to pay your bills, make investment, and achieve your financial goal. So whether you want to think about the short term or the long term, you have to have system and measures in place so that you can meet those goals and objectives. When you're running your business, you always want to have inflows, you always want to have income coming in, and you want to have cash going out, but you want to control the amount of cash that is going out, and you want to stop leakage and slippage from taking place. A business with a positive operating cash flow is generally considered to be healthy. So a business with a negative operating cash flow is generally considered to be in a financial bind. When you have your household and you're making, say, you make $100,000, and your expenses, that's the income coming in from all the sources that you have, and your expenses is $150,000, there means that you have a negative cash flow, because you have more money going out that you have coming in. So you have 100, and then you are going to minus the income, the revenue, from the expenses, which would be the 150, and then we have minus 50, and that minus 50 indicates that we have a problem. So that minus 50,000 indicates that there is a challenge, there is mismanagement taking place. And if you are in this position, the first thing that I would advise you to do is to assess where you are, put all your income, all your expenses, and see where your money is going. Once you can identify where your money is going, then you can plug the leaks. But most persons don't want to take accountability for their money. And if you're not willing to take accountability for your money, then you cannot complain to anybody about your money problem. Because your money problem is not their money problem, it's your problem and it's your business. So you have to get ahead of this business so that you can safeguard yourself, your family, your relatives, and all those who depend upon you. Because when you are not exercising your fiduciary duty in monitoring, maintaining, multiplying the resources that God has gifted unto you, then that put others at a disadvantage who should be blessed by you. So I want you to bear that in mind, that your purpose is greater than just being a selfish individual, because your blessings will be moving out to other persons. So the more you amass, the more you can share, the more you can help other persons to get their feet on the ground. And I am sure that that is something that you desire to do. So uh, there are various ways that people can increase their cash flow. So when we think about increasing your cash flow, many persons may think about getting another another job for an individual purpose. But let us think about it. The quantity of time sometimes is less valuable than the quality of time. So getting another job, say you work at $10 per hour and you get another job that pays you $10 or $9 per hour. Uh, Working 20 hours per week is not as beneficial to you as an individual. So what you should try to do is to upskill, so that instead of just making $10 per hour, you can now position yourself to make $20 per hour, and even working half that time with only one job, then guess what? You are still in a better position. I know that we always say that one source of income is too close to zero, and that is true. But we don't want you to have multiple jobs. We want you to have your hands in multiple things, yes, but we don't want you to be jack of all trades, master of none. What we want you to do, you can have your W 2 job, your regular 9 to 5 job, but you can also have other sources of income coming in. Do not despise your 9 to 5, because this is basically the foundation on which many persons are given experiences and have an appreciation to understand how the real world works. So do not despise the 9 to 5. You can have your 9 to 5, which is one source of income, and then you can have your business, which you work on after you have completed your 9 to 5. Position yourself so that you can get the desires that you could receive. So, in thinking about this positions us to move to the next phase of increasing our income. If we can get a better job, then move forward to that. If you can offer more, if you're a sales rep, then you sell more, or you sell more high value items. What you can do in some instances, especially in the starting phase, is reduce your expenses. All the unnecessary things that you have, get rid of them so that you can generate some cash. And all the things that you are subscribed to that you don't use, or it doesn't value or merit the amount you're paying for subscription, you can get rid of those as well. And what you're going to have to do is to manage your inventory levels. So things that you have that are going down, things that you have that are too much, you manage those inventory, you balance out everything, so you're basically restabilizing your position. But in order to do all of this, you have to know your numbers. It's important to regularly review and analyze your cash flow to ensure that not only your business but your individual resources has met its financial obligation to achieve their financial goals. The reason for us to live and exist in this world is to share in the resources that God has gifted to us. And in sharing in those resources, we have to ensure that our cash is moving. And once the cash is moving, we can have cash flow. But we want the cash to be moving in a positive direction so that we can say, yes, this is positive cash flow. Now that we have covered cash flow, it's time for us to go to COC, cash on cash return. An important metric that we should consider when we are dealing with our finances is cash on cash return, or the COC. So the cash on cash return is the measure of the cash flow that an investment generates in relation to the amount of cash that you invested. It is commonly used to evaluate the performance of your rental properties, but it also used to evaluate different types of investment as well. But we're considering real estate when we're talking about cash on cash return. But you can do this with other investment opportunities that you may position yourself into. So the formula for calculating the cash on cash return is the cash or the total annual cash flow divided by the total cash invested times 100. So all of that is going to be divided by 100. So let's get that formula. Let's get the formula for the cash on cash return. So the cash on cash return equals the annual cash flow divided by the total cash invested. You generate your number and then you times that by 100. So let us take an example. So if you invested $100,000 into a rental property and the property receives an annual cash flow of $10,000, then in order to determine what the cash on cash return is, you're going to have that 10,000 divided by that 100,000 that you invested times the 10 times 100 would equal 10%. So this means that the investment has generated a 10% rate of return on the cash investment invested. So that is, there is the cash on cash return. So the cash on cash return is useful to measure the performance of an investment because it shows the return on the cash invested rather than the overall return of the investment. This can be helpful for comparing investment with different price points or for evaluating the potential return of an investment before it is appreciated in value. So you want to know if you're thinking about buying property A, property B, property C, and you already know how much you're going to invest in property A, property B, property C based on the price that they want, you have to know how much will you be getting on that investment. So based on your cash on cash return, the one that has a higher value would be the one that you would move into selecting to enjoy because you want the best return or the best bang for your bucks. All right, so that there is a cash on cash return.